These are 5 fragrances that I'm going to. Lord have mercy, this young fool look anything more.
Human brains are fried. Why can't we stop scrolling? Why does it always feel like you open your phone for a minute and suddenly it's been an hour? You don't even remember the last 3 TikToks you've watched. And somehow we just continue scrolling, thinking there's something better coming, just one scroll away. And most people will hear this and say, you just have no self-control, no discipline, and it's all your fault. But what if that's not the whole story? What if our behavior is being shaped in ways that we haven't been taught to see? That's what I'm here to talk about today. Doomscrolling refers to the compulsive habit of endlessly consuming digital content, whether it makes you feel good or not. Now, doomscrolling sits squarely within the field of social psychology. And social psychology studies how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all influenced by their environment and the people around them. And doomscrolling is one of the most powerful examples of this in action. The core concept that I want to connect this to is the attribution theory, specifically the fundamental attribution error. The attribution theory, developed by Fritz Heider, explains how we decide why people behave the way they do. The fundamental attribution error is our tendency to blame the person, their character, and their weakness instead of looking at the situation that shapes their behavior. So, when someone doomscrolls for hours, we say they're addicted or they lack discipline. But social psychology says, look at the system they're in, because the system was built to keep them there. To understand why this works, we need to start with psychologist B.F. Skinner. Skinner discovered something called intermittent reinforcement, which is a fancy way of saying unpredictable rewards are the most addictive kind. When a reward appears randomly rather than every time, the behavior becomes almost impossible to stop. That's exactly how a slot machine works. You pull the lever not knowing whether you'll win or you'll lose or get nothing. The uncertainty is the addiction. Now, think about your phone. Every scroll is a lever pull. Sometimes you hit something amazing, such as a funny video or something meaningful, but usually you don't. But that randomness is exactly what keeps you going. Asa Raskin, who is an engineer that created the infinite scroll in 2006, later admitted that by removing what he called stopping cues, which are like the natural endings in newspapers or books, he created something that the brain literally cannot tell to stop. And he estimated that almost 200,000 lives are lost per day because of that. The idea that situations shape behavior more than personality is backed by 2 of the most famous experiments in all of psychology. First, Stanley Milgram's obedience study from 1963. Participants were told to give increasingly painful electric shocks to someone in a different room. Even when they heard loud screams coming from that room, 65% of people continued to deliver these electric shocks despite the screams coming from that room, just because an authority figure told them to do so. These weren't cruel people, they were just ordinary people in a situation designed to produce obedience and compliance. Then there's Philip Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment, where students were randomly selected to become prisoners or prison guards, and within days, the guards became increasingly more abusive. Not because of who they were, but because of the environment and the roles that they have been placed in. Both of these experiments and studies deliver the same point. People don't act in isolation. They respond to systems, pressure, and design. And once you understand that about a prison experiment, it's not hard to see in a social media feed. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable. The reason I say this is because these aren't just speculations. These people have admitted it. Sean Parker, one of Facebook's original leaders, publicly said in 2017 that the platform was deliberately designed to give users dopamine hits, which are those small moments of social validation through likes and comments. So you might be thinking, why are they doing this? So let me tell you why. They do this to keep people coming back to their applications. He said they understood that they were exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. Another former Facebook executive called these feedback loops destructive and said they're ripping apart the social fabric. On top of that, our brain has something called a negativity bias.
we naturally pay more attention to negative information than positive. This evolved so our ancestors could detect threats, but today, it means scary, outrage-driven content will always get more engagement. And algorithms learn that and serve us more of it, so we're wired for threat detection, and the feed is designed to endlessly trigger it. This idea made it into fiction too, because it's become one of the most defining anxieties of our time. Take 1984 by George Orwell. The thing about that world that hits different when you think about social media is that it's not just the government that's watching, it's the citizens that are always inside the system. There's no outside, the telescreen never turns off, the party controls all the information, what happened, what is real, and what the world looks like, what you should be afraid of, and people don't see reality. They see whatever the system has decided they should see, and because they've never seen anything else, most of them don't even question it. Now, think about your social media feed. When you open social media, you're not seeing the world. You're seeing a version of the world that an algorithm assembled specifically to keep you engaged. It decides that what feels urgent, what feels threatening, and what feels like the enemy. Most people experience that as reality. They don't see the construction, and when they feel anxious or angry after scrolling, they blame themselves or the world, not the system that built what they just consumed. That's the greatest fundamental attribution error, but directly into the architecture. In 1984, the party's greatest achievement wasn't surveillance, it was making the people unable to imagine things that could be otherwise. And then there's Dune, both Frank Herbert's novels and recent films. In Dune, the Bene Gesserit secretly engineer myths and prophecies to entire civilizations over centuries, just to wait for that right moment, which arrives and populations move in the direction that they've been programmed to. This references the Lisan al-Gaib's coming in the movie itself, and they believe that they're acting freely. This is one of the most precise metaphors that I've seen of the algorithm itself and what it actually does. People think that they're freely choosing what they're scrolling through and what they're watching, but those choices have been shaped by a system that is designed to produce specific behaviors. Dune asks us whether any individual can truly resist a system built to produce them. Doomscrolling asks us the same exact question, just on a smaller and daily scale. So, here's where it all links back to the attribution theory. One of the highest forms of emotional intelligence is understanding and knowing that you can't fully blame someone for their behavior, such as that atrocious dance. And because you understand what truly caused it, you see the wound behind the habit, the design behind the addiction. But here's the thing, understanding does not mean excusing. Just because you understand something and why it happens, and just because it makes sense, does not mean it gets to stay in your life.